the AI poll?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Figured it's a good stall tactic while I wait for people to jump on.
Good to get a base level in the room.
So I'll kick it off about 2 minutes afterward. And can you see the results?
I think you have to share the results for them to come through.
Alrighty. Good, answers are coming in. So yeah, I'm going to share one slide, just talk about the user group, and then I'll introduce you, and then I assume you've got some slides you want to show and some show and tell.
Absolutely. Very excited to be here. This will be fun.
Yeah, I really like your last one. I actually watched it twice. Oh, great. One moment. All right. All right, let's get going here. All right. Well, thanks for joining everybody. Just a quick intro of myself. My name is John Helena. I'm the founder of CRM Assist. Please go ahead and mute if you're. Thank you. And I'm also the leader of the newly revisited Orange County user group. You can find that on the HubSpot site, or just Google, HubSpot user groups. There was a Orange County group, I guess, before COVID, and I'm bringing it back. I'm very excited about it. It's our third meeting. I've had some great speakers so far. So you don't have to be local to be part of any user group. And what I'm doing right now is I'm doing monthly meetings. This one obviously is remote only. I've got another one coming up where it's going to be a hybrid, where I have a facility in Irvine. And I got a little special surprise. HubSpot sent me a bunch of swag. So I'll be giving that out in August. And I saw some of the swag at the San Diego user group a few weeks ago. It's really nice. So anyway, you can sign up for that here. If you go to the please sign up for the user group, more the merrier. And then if you go to the events, this is where you can sign up for the August event, and hopefully I'll get to meet a lot of you in person. It was a very fun group last time. And we've got a special guest from HubSpot who's going to talk about a lot of their AI features, and they're also going to talk a lot about AEO and what they're calling loop marketing, what that is. So very hot topic. We're all trying to figure out how to transition from SEO to AEO, so people can find us on all the different answer engines. And so it should be a very interesting session. And so with that, our special guest today is Eli from BackEngine AI. I will let you do the honors of your own introduction, Eli. Go ahead and take it away.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be here and how much I appreciate you inviting us. And I think Rafa and I are going to do this webinar together. But what we're really going to talk about today, what we're really excited to share with you, is something that we're seeing across lots and lots of different companies, and something that we think is probably very relevant to you guys. And that's, why is it that so many different companies are deploying AI, and for some of them, it works incredibly well, where all of a sudden it becomes a superpower. And for the vast majority of companies, it actually turns into a lot of chaos. And we're going to really dive deep and try and understand why that's happening and how you can help make sure that doesn't happen for the companies that you work with. So, from an agenda standpoint, I'm going to basically talk about three things. The first is why AI works so well for some and terribly for others. I want to go a little bit deeper in helping sort of give transparency around how AI uses data, which is going to really uncover some very interesting things and some takeaways. And then I want to spend a few minutes on a few workflows that you can build today using Claude and the data you already have. A couple of small things. If you have any questions as we're going through this, please put them in the chat. Let me know. I'm happy to take any questions, happy to go deeper on any of this. And then we'll definitely have time at the end as well for questions. Cool. And then also, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself, that would be super helpful. 2%. Okay. All right. So let's get started. And just as I get started, I'm going to ask some questions, and feel free to start putting the answers into the chat. But I'm curious, like across your team and the other teams that you work with, what are some of the examples of the types of questions you've seen teams ask in Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini? And if you don't mind just putting that in the chat, that'll be helpful, because we'll be able to use that to go deeper. Yeah, sorry, Betty, I don't know if you can hear me, but if you wouldn't mind muting. Yeah, thank you. Okay, cool. So I'm starting to see some questions coming in, like summarize contract engagement. Yeah, that's a really good one. If there are others, just start putting them in there, because they will help inform a lot of what we talk about. Okay, cool. So let's get started. So why is it that AI works so well for some and so terribly for others? And what I've seen, and I've gotten a chance to have a front row seat at dozens and dozens of AI deployments, and I've seen that it basically goes one of two ways. In some companies, AI is basically like a superpower. Think of it as like a money printing agent, where all of a sudden, as soon as it gets implemented, the whole team feels like they have a force multiplier where productivity goes up, quality goes up, sales go up. The only thing that goes down is costs. All of a sudden, people are more efficient. Unfortunately, that's the very minority of cases. Almost all of the time when I see AI get deployed, it looks a lot more like that second image, where it's basically a lot of people using it. Usage is not the issue, but the outputs just aren't great. They're inconsistent. And more than anything, there's confusion and chaos across the entire board. So all of a sudden, you deploy this big, expensive, beautiful new toy, and instead of getting great outputs, people are just creating more stuff that's bad, and the results, however you measure them, don't seem to get better. And this is a question that I've been really trying to ponder and understand. Why is it that it works so well for some and so poorly for others? And what really confuses me even more is that when I use AI personally, when anyone uses AI personally, you see how powerful it is. And you think that if you take that power and you give it to a team, it would naturally make the team better. And yet it doesn't seem like that's what's happening. And that's a really, really important question that I want to dive deep on. So the first answer that I think we have to start with is that LLMs, the large language models, the things that the AI that's actually powering Claude, ChatGPT, they're trained on pretty much all of the data in the world, absolutely everything, except for your data. They don't know anything about the company that you're working in. And so while they can answer all sorts of really interesting questions around, like, help me write a poem, or make this email sound better, or explain the theory of relativity to me, that's all available from public data, and they're really good at it. But when you ask it something specific to your business, it really struggles, because it doesn't actually know your business, your customers, your processes, any of that stuff. And the analogy I have is, imagine that you were running a company, let's just say a mid-market company, and all of a sudden you fell into a massive amount of budget, unlimited budget, and you could hire as many of the smartest people as you wanted to from the world. And you went out and you hired 500 people from the top colleges, and you brought them into your office. But the one catch is, you just can't train them. You can't onboard them. You can't tell them anything about your business. And you basically just tell them, go do stuff. what would happen? You'd end up with massive chaos. These people would be ambitious. They'd want to be helpful. They'd try to do stuff, but they'd be so ill-equipped to help you that they would just create chaos in your organization. And that's really what's happening with AI. We've got these really, really smart reasoning agents that don't know anything about the business, and we're not spending enough training them and getting them ramped up on our business itself. And so what we end up with, you end up having chaos, just lots and lots of chaos. All these people now have AI that they can turn to and use to generate stuff to do stuff, but none of it is great because these AI agents just don't really understand your business. And to really bring this home, I wanted to show a couple of examples of what it looks like when AI has data versus when it doesn't. And so, like, one of the questions that I see a lot of people try and ask AI is like, what committed deals for this quarter are going sideways? And most folks know that the best way to do this is you go into HubSpot and you start looking through the different call notes and deal notes, and it's a very manual process because you've got what the rep has told you, and then you're trying to basically decipher that and figure out if that's true or not. And that takes a really long time. And you can just go and ask Claude. And if Claude had context and full knowledge and understood your deals and all of the things that were happening with those deals, it'd actually be able to produce a really, really helpful answer that would save you a tremendous amount of time. It would tell you this account is valued at this amount and it's on track, and the rep says it's on track, and so on and so forth. And it would save you a huge amount of time. Without context, what the LLM would be able to do is basically tell you something to the effect of, I don't have access to the deals, but I can give you best practices on evaluating deals. Okay, somewhat helpful, but you probably know what to do. It's not an issue of knowing what to do. It's just you don't have time to do it. But because the LLM doesn't have context, it can't go do it for you. Another example of this, if someone wanted to say something like, prioritize our roadmap based on impact to deals and renewals, and then build me a product requirements document for the top 3 features. So go find out what product features we need to build that are gating revenue, and go tell me how to build them so I can give it to my engineering team. Again, if you have the data, if the model, if the AI is trained on your data, if it understands your business, if it's seeing what's happening in your business, it can easily go do that. But if it doesn't, then what you'd end up with is something very, very different. You get something like, I don't have access to your roadmap or how any items impact sales or renewals, but if you tell me more about a feature, I can help turn it into a PRD. Again, probably not the biggest pain point to solve for, but it can't do any more because it just doesn't know any of the information. And there are tons and tons of examples. I won't go through all of them, but whether it's handoff documents from sales to CS, or understanding the biggest issues, or building out a strategy doc, like all of these things are things that theoretically AI can help with, but without understanding your business, it's basically just a lot of chaos. And one thing that I did want to share is these are just some of the examples of things that you can do with Claude. And if you train it and give it the data, and I'll share a lot more about that in a second, but I did want to call out that we do have a prompt library with about 100 different prompts and ideas for things that you can do inside of Claude or ChatGPT that will likely be very helpful. And we have a whole bunch of them for RevOps and for all sorts of different functions. So feel free to go to prompts.backengine.org. It might throttle you a little bit. And if it does, just email us and we'll unthrottle you so you can get access to more of them. So to come back to our original question, why is it that so many companies are having chaos from their AI rollout, and some companies, and a very small percentage of them, are actually getting a lot of value? It comes down to the same thing as if you hired a bunch of people. If you onboard them, if you train them, if you set them up for success, you can get tremendous amount out of them. And it's the same thing with an AI rollout. If you're not putting in the effort and the really being thoughtful about how you make sure that it's equipped to give you the answers and the work product that you need, it's going to have a very, very hard time doing that. So again, if you guys have any questions, just put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to start with the next section, which is, how does AI actually use this data, and what's the best way to feed this data into your model so that it can actually do these things that we've been talking about doing, so it can answer real questions and do real work for you and really drive massive gains for the organization. And so the big question here is, how do you add this knowledge and this context? How do you stuff it into the LLM? And there are basically three different ways that we've seen. And each of them have their trade-offs and their benefits. So the first is to manually add in all of the data that you have every single time you prompt. So this is basically what most people do, which is you're about to ask a question and you start trying to give it all the information it needs. Well, I need you to help me figure out how to write this deck, and this is what the meeting is about, and this is what my company does, and here's a couple of websites that talk about our product, and here's a couple of transcripts from a few calls that you can include, and you basically just stuff it in and manually try to get it to have all of the knowledge it needs. And that works. The problem is that it really doesn't scale, and it doesn't scale for a couple of reasons. One is every single time you have to be adding this information. The second is that you have a wide variety of like, you're going to end up having a lot of variance from person to person. Some people will do this very well and they'll be very methodical. Some people won't. And again, that just leads to chaos because you need to have consistency and scalability in whatever method you deploy. But this is definitely a viable, and it's the easiest way to get started. The second way, and this is almost as easy, maybe even easier, is to just use connectors. Basically, there is a protocol that you all probably know about. If you don't, it's called MCP. MCP is basically the way that you can connect to an LLM. And a lot of apps now have MCP connections. So you can basically connect Gmail, for instance, or HubSpot, or Fireflies, or Fathom, a whole bunch of different tools directly to Claude. And it's a super easy connection. You basically just click authorize, like you have here, you allow it, and then all of a sudden, Claude or ChatGPT has access to this data, which is really, really cool. The problem is these are raw pipes, and raw pipes means that you're basically asking the LLM to go and process all of the data every single time you ask it a question. So the analogy I use is, imagine you are in a library and you get dropped into this big, massive, massive warehouse of documents and books and all sorts of stuff. And someone tells you, hey, go find the best murder story involving aliens. And there's no catalog, there's no index. You're basically in this library with a ton of books. What would you do? How would you even figure out how to answer that question? I mean, one way is you could try to read everything, but that would take you a massive, massive amount of time and would be incredibly expensive from a token standpoint. And realistically, no one could hold all that much in their head, and no one could actually do that. Neither can a large language model. The second way is you would sample. You would basically browse a few shelves, find things that kind of look like they might be murder mysteries, read a few of them, hope that there's one that has an alien in it, and then call it done. And you'd be able to produce a report, but it would be a very, very inaccurate, incomplete report. And that's really what's happening when LLMs get connected to connectors. They're going in there, they're getting access to the entire CRM data, all the call transcripts, they're getting access to all these different support tickets and emails. And then you're asking it a question like, which deal is going sideways? And it has no concept of how to do that. And so it starts to read some of it, make some educated guesses, samples, and then comes back with an answer. And it ends up being a very exciting opportunity, because you can start to get a sense for how great it is when you have an answer that has some context, but you end up with very, very poor answers that are dangerous. We actually ran a whole bunch of experiments around this, and what we found is that 23% of questions that you ask an LLM using direct connectors end up with an error. So 1 out of every 4 times you're going to have like a massive substantial error that will flow into the question because of how these direct connectors are set up. And the third way is a knowledge graph. So what a knowledge graph basically says is, instead of connecting all the tools directly to your large language model, let's build a layer in between that's joining and connecting and cleaning all of this data and creating basically an index. If you go back to our library analogy, it's like someone building a catalog and an index and even a librarian that's already read everything and knows exactly what to give the LLM or the AI when it's trying to do something. And so what a knowledge graph basically does is it connects to your email, your support tickets, your usage data, your case studies, your video calls, your Jira tickets, your templates, your processes, all of it. It reads it, it joins it, so it understands that this email was about this topic, and this case study or this video call was about this specific customer that also had this ticket, and it brings it all together and it cuts it in a bunch of different ways. And then when Claude or ChatGPT or any other LLM wants to answer a question, it's not basically hitting those raw apps itself with all of their data. It basically has a very organized way of getting at it, which is why I kind of talk about it like an index. It's basically a way for the LLM to find exactly what it needs. So if we go back to that question of, you're in a library and you need to figure out the murder mystery about aliens, you just ask it, show me all the books about murder mysteries that include aliens, and only show me those that are 5-star and above. And all of a sudden, you've gone from a massive library to a very, very workable subset of books. And now you can actually answer the question. And that's what a knowledge graph does. We've seen that when you use knowledge graphs, two things happen. So the first is those error rates that I talked about, where it was 23%. If you're just using connectors, those go down to 7.6%. So you get a massive increase in quality. And also your cost to produce these answers go way down. And I'm sure you guys are all seeing this, but token costs are becoming a big thing in AI because it's expensive. And the more AI you give people, the more they use it, the more it ends up costing. And if you basically are just connecting things directly, what you end up with is a whole bunch of people hitting a whole bunch of data and spending a huge amount of tokens trying to do that library analogy and like reading through as much as they can until it fallbacks and starts sampling. And so when you have a graph, you end up actually saving what we found is on average of $1,300 a year per person answering these questions. So pretty sizable savings. So those are two of the many benefits around using a graph, but the question is building it and putting it up. But I think it's definitely worth the initiative to try and do that. I'll stop there. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me or put them in the chat or put them into the Q&A box. Okay, so I do see a question here. Is it worth, and this is from Manjeet, is it worth migrating to a new AI platform when your data is already deeply integrated into your current one, but the newcomer offers more advanced features? That's a really, really interesting question. And the answer is nuanced, and it depends a little bit on what platform you're doing, how easy it is to migrate, and what AI you're thinking about moving. I'd say a couple of thoughts. So the first is, I have never, in the 20 years that I've been working, and 15 of those in AI, so I've been doing data science and AI for about 15 years, I have never seen things change quite as quickly as they are right now. And so a tool that looks like it's the front runner right now and has more features and is more advanced may not be the most advanced tool in 6 months or 3 months or even a month. And so migrating because they're a little bit better now, I think is potentially dangerous. I think what would be better is to find a way to decouple your systems from your data. And that's one of the benefits of a knowledge graph, is you're decoupling them. And that means that you can move from AI platform to AI platform. You're not wedded to any platform, and those platforms still get access to all of the data. And that's why I think, like, architecturally, this is an important way to think about data architecture in the age of AI, where you have your different systems and you can swap systems easily, but they're all feeding into the same graph. And then you can swap AIs easily because nothing is locking you in. And I think that makes a lot of sense in general, but especially now where things are changing so quickly, and literally every day someone is rolling out something new. I mean, it's a lot of whiplash, which I'm sure you guys are all seeing as well. Thank you for the question, though. And that is true. Someone may have to mute. I don't know exactly who it is, but if you're not muted and you don't mind muting, that would be really helpful. Cool. Any other questions? Anything else that on this topic that you'd like me to cover? Okay. All right. So let's go through a few more workflows. And I don't know if I'm going to have time to do all of them, but I do want to go through. Oh, I do see a question from Brett. Thank you. Would love to know how to set up a graph. Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways to set up a graph, and you can basically set it up in a couple of different ways. So the simplest way is to basically use Claude Code or build out some bit of code that just processes, basically uses a direct MCP connection into your tools and your systems, and says basically on a daily basis, grab all the data that's coming through, read it, organize it, structure it, and then build some layer of like almost like a data lake, if you will, with an MCP connection on both sides, and then everyone's just connecting to the MCP on one side, and all your tools are connected on the other side. You could do it. People have done it. I'm happy to offline to actually even share some architectural diagrams around how to do it and how to think about it and what tools you could do it with. The other is you can buy a graph, and that's actually what BackEngine does. The company that I started, we build knowledge graphs. So it's a 15-minute setup. We'll connect to the different tools that you have. Then we'll do all of the data cleaning, the backfill, all of the processing, and then we'll just give you an MCP connection, and anyone can plug in and it's done. But you can build it yourself, or you can use someone like BackEngine. Cool. All right, so let's talk about the workflow. So the first one I want to show you is a real-time dashboard of your accounts. So this is the prompt, and we'll share the prompts after, so you don't have to feel like you have to copy them down. But the basic idea is what you want to do in the prompt, and this is specific to Claude, but these same features exist in ChatGPT and the other tools. But in chat, you have this concept of a live artifact. A live artifact is basically like a dashboard that it can build out for you and then update with fresh data. So what we're doing in this prompt is we're saying, hey, Claude, I want you to build me an artifact that becomes my Monday morning command center for the active BackEngine customer accounts. So this is for us. I want to see my customer accounts. Build it so that the dashboard pulls fresh data every time I open it, but use it a hybrid grading model, which I explained below. And then it's basically show me every active BackEngine account as a row in a single scrolling list. And for each row, I want to see name, customer tier, ARR, signal count, and a big letter grade. I want you to actually score it based on everything you're seeing, and so on and so forth. And like I said, we'll share these prompts with you, so we don't have to go too deep into them. But because we're doing this as a live artifact, and because Claude is connected to all of these different systems and has access through, in our case, a knowledge graph, it basically comes up and we'll ask a couple of more questions, like what time window do we want to be looking at, and do you want it to be fixed or let the user select it. And then it will actually build you a dashboard, and then you can adjust it and change it and have it basically move any field wherever you want it to, and you can make it clickable, so you can click into like Cloud Sync and see all of the underlying data. You could literally build the exact dashboard that you want, and it's really as easy as a prompt. Well, it's a prompt plus the data plus having cowork. And if you have those three things, you can build something that, at least in my previous company, if we wanted to do something like that, we just wouldn't. It would have been way, way, way too expensive and would have been incredibly hard to do. Another, and I'm seeing, sorry, another message. I've been using Claude for a while now. Would love that to get this example on how to set it up. Yeah, absolutely. So Brett, if you don't mind reaching out afterwards, we can set up a call. We'd be happy to help you set it up. Okay, so use case number 2. This is, how do you automatically write a weekly status update? And before I go there, I did see another question. What's the difference between a prompt and a workflow? Okay, that's a great question. I'll caveat before I answer it that in AI, there is a lot of jargon, and there's a lot of hype, and there's a lot of people trying to break through the noise by coming up with new words and new terms to say the exact same thing. And so in general, like when people say things like agentic and harnesses and all sorts of different things, like a lot of the times they either don't know what it means, or they're confusing concepts, or they're using different things. So anytime you hear something, I would just double click and try to understand what they're referring to, because I've seen 20 something definitions for the same term, and it seems to be getting worse rather than better. But in the terms of a prompt and a workflow, a prompt typically refers to the thing that you tell the AI, the large language model, to go do. So a prompt could be something like prep me for this meeting, or it could be help me fix this email, or it could be something much more elaborate like here's 3 pieces of data and I want you to analyze them and I want you to go do research and I want you to go do, it's your instructions, the instructions that you're giving the large language model. Whereas a workflow is when you're trying to have something chained together to actually do something for you. So a workflow might be something like every day before 8 a.m., send me an email with all of my upcoming meetings for the day and a prep guide for each of them. That would be more of a workflow because it's a series of steps that have to happen, and it's a workflow that happens on a frequent enough basis. And so you're basically automating something that you would have done manually. Again, that's the best way I have to define it. You probably can get 15 definitions if you look online. I'm glad you didn't ask me what an agent is, because then I would have probably been able to give you 37 different explanations, but hopefully that helps. And I see Dustin tokening meter payment system. Yes. Tokens are an interesting one, by the way, because there's so many variables around tokens. You have input tokens, which is basically what you're giving the AI. You have output tokens, which is basically the number of tokens that it's using in the answers. And by the way, tokens are effectively characters. It's not an exact one-to-one match, but it's generally like 1 token is 1 character. And this is how you get metered and charged in the AI world. The more tokens or characters you give in your instructions, the more you pay, and there's one price for that. And then the bigger the answer, the more elaborate the answer, the more tokens you pay, the more tokens and the more you pay, and those have a different price point. What further complicates this is that you also have reasoning tokens, which is you might not even see them in the answer, but they were tokens that were used to come up with the answer. And you also have every single model provider has multiple different models and multiple different thinking levels and multiple different price points. And so calculating the cost for anything is incredibly, incredibly hard. And it's probably the biggest frustration I'm hearing right now, or at least the most topical frustration, is just how expensive it all is and how difficult it is for anyone to know how much they're spending, and how the really only way to manage it is to just put hard caps on people. Cool. All right. So let's use the next workflow. So automatically writing a weekly status update. So again, we'll share the prompt after, but run a scheduled report every Friday at 4 that looks at my email, calendar, Notion, Slack, and Google Drive to provide a 50-word summary on what I pushed forward and a list of things I checked off on. Every manager I've ever had has asked me for some level of status update, and I always found it incredibly painful because I was moving really fast and I didn't remember exactly what I did. And I was busy doing other things, and it just felt like it wasn't the most helpful or productive use of my time. And this is just an automated way of driving that. So you just a simple prompt, and as long as your AI is connected to these different tools, it can look through what you did for the past week. It can build you a summary, and it can send it to you as an email, which is helpful to you to just have a quick view of what you've done over the week, but also very helpful if you have to report up or sideways or whatever it is, to be able to have, or if you have people who report to you and you want to get this, but you don't want to burden them with the task of putting it together, the simple prompt will do it for you. The second thing you can do is you can also have these pushed into Notion, and then you have a archive of what you've done over the week. And then another prompt you can write is just to say, go look at the last 3 months of weekly reports and tell me what the trends are, or what I was focused on, or anything that you want to look at. And all of a sudden you've got more context and more knowledge that the LM can go pull things with. So it's another one I really like, and I tend to do quite often. Okay, so when you enter this one in, what will happen is you'll notice that in the prompt we're saying run a scheduled report every Friday at 4. That's actually telling Claude to use what it calls scheduled tasks, and scheduled tasks are basically jobs that are going to run on a recurring basis. So what it will do is it will ask you to confirm that you actually want to schedule it, because once you schedule it, it will actually run every week and it will use your tokens and it will happen every week. And so you hit schedule and then you get back basically a weekly digest of what you worked on. And I get this every week and I find it incredibly helpful and interesting. Before I do the next one, I do see there's a comment. I thought these workflows would be particularly related to HubSpot. We do have a whole bunch that are related to HubSpot. I'd be happy to share those with you after the call, if that's helpful. And in the prompt library, hopefully you can find a whole bunch of them that are tied to HubSpot. Yeah, perfect. Will do. Okay, this last use case is one-on-ones that don't suck. And here, this is something that I've always found frustrating is I have one-on-ones with folks and oftentimes there's really just status updates. Either I'm asking questions or I'm providing an update or the other person's asking questions or providing an update, but there's no real like strategy, no real like career guidance. There's no real sort of like figuring out and resolving issues because they really just turn into status updates. And the reason for that is that the other person doesn't know what I've been doing and I don't know what's been going on with them. And so this next prompt is basically progress on goals. So what it does is it looks at the goals that someone's committed to and it tracks against them and it provides an automated view of how that person is doing against those goals. And what ends up being super, super helpful and powerful about this is that when you meet with that person or when they meet with you, they have a full view of exactly how you're doing towards your goals. It is pulling from your emails, it is pulling from your call transcripts, it's pulling from your Notion, it's pulling from all the places, and it's giving so everyone has an exact view of exactly where things stand. And so you don't have to do the update. You can just focus on what are the blockers, how do we resolve them, what are some strategies, where can we be helpful? And these one-on-ones turn from something that I really dread and aren't all that helpful and are just basically ways to communicate up and down to actually very helpful and very strategic and very collaborative. So those were the three workflows that I wanted to go through. We have many more, as I mentioned, in the prompt guide, and I'm also very happy to share others offline and definitely ping me and I can share HubSpot related ones and so on and so forth. But that's the bulk of the content I wanted to go through. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have any additional questions or talk about any other topic that you might find relevant. And yeah, Rafa or John, if you have anything else that you'd like to add, this would be a great time.
Sure.
Yeah, I think Ellie, sorry, John, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, go ahead. Thanks, Eli. That was great. Go ahead,
you.
Rafa.
Ellie, I was going to just say, I think touched on it late at the beginning, but it might be a rich conversation given the audience here and how proficient they are in HubSpot. Just talking about the ways we've tried capturing information directly from HubSpot into Claude and some of the benefits that you get from actually having the MCP connection, maybe talking through like what it is to set up an MCP connection into Claude, and then where it falls apart. And I know people want to write back into HubSpot, set up some workflow. So maybe just talk through the process that we went through and why we chose to go the knowledge graph route instead of just connecting HubSpot directly into Claude.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the thing about HubSpot is it's a super, super powerful system where most companies have made massive investments in getting their data into HubSpot and piping in a whole bunch of different information and also having reps type in notes. And it's just a really, really rich repository. And it's super cool that HubSpot has now made an MCP connector available. So anyone with a Claude account, anyone with a ChatGPT account can connect to HubSpot and can go and search through their HubSpot repository of information, which is really helpful. It breaks down very similarly to the library analogy that I mentioned. So I want to take a very specific example and kind of diagnose it to talk about both the potential issues, but also the very, very significant upside. If you were to ask someone to basically, you gave them access to your HubSpot and you said something like, tell me which of my customers are most likely to churn. The way you would probably do that in HubSpot is you would go look at renewal dates, and that would be one sorting mechanism. And you would start looking at which ones are renewing in the shortest amount of time. And then you would probably go and read through some of the notes from the CSMs, and you would probably try to look through some emails, and you would maybe look through whatever other information you had in HubSpot to make a decision. That works fine if you have, let's say, 15 customers, 20 customers, 30 customers. But if you have 100, 200, 300 customers, or if you have a few hundred prospects, that becomes very, very difficult because there's no sort of like organized mechanism by which to determine risk and understand risk other than actually reading everything, unless someone is putting in a health grade, but then you have to go verify that health grade. And so the good news is that the more robust the HubSpot deployment is, the more information that's in there, the more likely the LLM is able to get a good answer. And that is good. And so if you are piping in health scores and you're piping in all sorts of other information and you've got it well structured and cleaned well, and you've done a great job of that, then the LLM will have an easier time. It still will have a harder time because it's just what these connections are, like I called them before, like pipes, they're dumb pipes. So it still won't be able to get a perfect view and minimize the tokens and get perfect accuracy, because it won't be able to just go and know immediately which are the 4 accounts that are at most risk and then just go get the data for those accounts and give an answer, but it will have a better answer. So that's my first point, which is the cleaner your data, the more comprehensive your data in HubSpot, the better Claude can use it, and the more of a chance you have at getting good answers through that connector. So I think that creates even more importance around having a HubSpot instance that is really, really in good shape. The second thing I would say is if you do decide to use a knowledge graph, which is, as I mentioned before, is how I think you end up getting the most accurate, best answers. The knowledge graph requires an integration to HubSpot. It requires an integration to the CRM. The CRM is still the source of truth for so much of the information. It's just now getting joined and combined and sort of like added to other information and categorized and cataloged. And so the knowledge graph is not a replacement for HubSpot. It's just just like you can have a catalog of all your books. It doesn't replace the library. You still need your CRM. You just want to have like an index that makes it easier, that's built for an LLM. So those would be my 2 major thoughts around HubSpot in the age of MCP connections and LLMs. And I would say play with it. Like one of the things that you can do is you can just connect Claude to HubSpot and ask it, what dimensions can you search by? What information can you get access to? If I asked you this question, how would you answer it? Go try and answer it. Then ask it again. How did you answer it? What did you actually look like? Get a sense for how Claude and ChatGPT use these MCP connections and where they're deficient and where they're good and what they're strong at. The problem I see a lot of people fall into is because the answers always look good. LLMs are basically built by definition to give us answers that we like. They're meant to please us. That's how they were built. They're predicting the next token to give based on how much it will please you. They're very, very good at making us think that they're giving us good answers. So by making it tell you how it got to that answer and what it looked like, you can actually get a sense for how it's working under the hood. I see more questions that are coming in. Let me. Okay, so would you need a knowledge graph for these 3 prompts? You don't need it. You can connect directly to HubSpot into whatever Gong or whatever different apps you're using, and you can put these prompts in and you'll get an answer. We have just found that the accuracy of those answers and the cost to produce those answers are wildly different than if you have a knowledge graph. So kind of like that library analogy, it just means that the LLM's going to have to spend a huge amount of time trying to go through every single piece of information to produce the result rather than having it handed just exactly what it needs. Thank you for that question. I see another one from Sabrina. I did think this was utilizing Claude with HubSpot data and creating flows back and forth from that said. So I would like to see what you have in regards to HubSpot. Yes, that, Rafael. Okay, so in terms of pushing data, pulling data and pushing data, I've mostly been focused on how do you pull data in from HubSpot. So you have that direct connector. We've talked a lot about how that's architected, some of the pitfalls, some of the benefits, why it's so important to have the data clean. In terms of pushing back, that's very easy because all you basically need is to give permission through the MCP for Claude to be able to write back. And you have to be very careful around this and make sure you really understand what you're doing. But you can ask Claude to then write back into your CRM. So you can give it a specific field and say, go write this in there. Or, every week you can run a scheduled task that says every week, look at every single one of these prospects, analyze all of the information we have, create a letter grade, and then pipe it back into this field. And you can absolutely do that. So it's a bi-directional opportunity to both read and write to the CRM using a lot of the intelligence that the LLMs come forth with.
Yeah, but be careful with that because look at your permissions, decide who you want to be able to write data back into. Because I've had customers that have loaded 2,000 new contacts with no email and no phone number. So, the getting the permissions right as you roll it out to your users is very important.
Totally agree. I mean, I'm assuming that this group probably knows 100 times better than almost any other group how dangerous it would be to just start writing back into the CRM nilly-willy. So yes, be very, very careful. I also see a question. I'm a newbie with all this AI stuff, and I've just been using Breeze and HubSpot with mediocre results, maybe my prompting. What are some great resources to learn how to use Claude and ChatGPT? So it's something I hear quite often. Breeze is not as good as some of the LLM labs like ChatGPT or Claude. Partially it's how they've built it. Partially it's the tools that it has access to. Partially it's that it's a part of their business, whereas Claude and ChatGPT, it is their entire business. But I don't think your issue is prompting. I think the issue is Breeze itself, and it will get better over time. But I don't think your issue there is prompting. I think it's the system itself. In terms of resources around Claude and ChatGPT, there's a lot. There's a lot of different things that you can look at. We can send out some specific newsletters and a couple of sites. We at BackEngine do a whole bunch of webinars and a whole bunch of we put out prompts and we put out a bunch of stuff there. But I honestly think the best way to learn is to just play with it. Just try to push it. The nice thing about AI is that you can, if you get stuck or you have questions or you don't know how to do something, you can ask it and it generally can guide you. And I would just really try to do stuff with it and try to be creative, take inspiration from wherever you will, and see what it can do or what it can't do. And I think you'll find that that will be the fastest way to ramp up, because it's one of those things that's daunting and overwhelming and feels scary, mostly because of all the jargon that people use and because of how fast it's changing. But it's pretty simple and intuitive if you just play with it for a little bit, because it's not a whole new language to understand. It's not a bunch of new systems. It's basically all AI is basically interacting through a chatbot, and a chatbot that can actually guide you through things. So yeah, that'd be my best advice. Just try stuff. Get stuck.
Yeah, and on the topic of Breeze, I mean, the one nice thing about it is that you can't do with Claude is configuration. So you can add properties, make modifications to your pipeline. And one thing I'm doing now, which is kind of cool, is now every project I create a HubSpot project and then a new project object. And then I configure it through Breeze. And then I also, when I do that, I have it added as a task to that project. So now it's pretty much a real-time catalog of every change I've made to the system.
That's great. And by the way, I saw Betty wrote that a coworker always tells it to answer like he is 5 years old. I totally agree with that. AI is always trying to sound smarter and use fancier words and just make it easy. But
And
that
overconfident.
is, yes, definitely overconfident. John, those are the questions I had. I really appreciate getting the opportunity to share this with you. Happy to share anything else that I can. If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to reach out. I think Rafa put my email in the meeting chat. It's eli@backengine.ai. And if I can be helpful in any way, please let me know.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thanks both of you. Couple other things on my side. Just one cool thing that I've discovered is if you're on HubSpot Starter Editions and you can't do any custom reporting, try it in Claude. So that's been pretty fun to play with. And then again, please sign up for the user group and sign up for the August event, the hybrid event. It'll be more AI topics. It will be very HubSpot specific with a HubSpot speaker. She works in their contracts department, so she has a very interesting perspective on how people are using credits. So that's something I think everybody will enjoy learning about. All right, we'll wrap it up. And feel free to read. I'll put my LinkedIn in here. It's really simple. It's just Jay Helena. And I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. Please connect with me, and I look forward to staying in touch with everybody.
Thank you, John. Bye, everyone.